Hello again, my name is Dr. Bill Johnson. I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Exploring Our Schools. Today's one of those favorite times of me in the fall when I have an opportunity to meet again with the students who participate in our drama here at Southside High School. One of the reasons I love it as much as I do is that it gives us really a great opportunity, not just to get an insight into what it is that we're producing, but into some of the characters and explore some of the reasons why we select what we do, and give us some insight into the depth of the programs that we have here at Southside. So I am very fortunate to have Deborah Tanklau, who in fact directs the play, and in fact is a long-standing member of our staff, not new to this program. So Deborah, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
We also have somebody who works backstage, Tim Bartoldis. Thank you very much for joining us. Actually, you're kind of like the stage manager.
Is the stage
We'll get into that in just a minute, what that means.
Yeah.
Not easy. No,
No,
it's,
he's a
right.
master.
Right?
Yep.
Well, your partner.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
in crime.
Right, okay, well, I didn't go that far. Right,
I
okay.
did.
All right. And Kara McDonald, thank you so much for joining us. We'll get into your position in just a minute as well. So tell me a little bit about the dramas and how, always fascinated in how we select them. Maybe we could just start there.
Yeah, we hadn't done a Shakespeare play in a long time. I think Miss Seiderman did Midsummer Night's Dream back in 2007. I did Twelfth Night, I think it was 2012. So I thought it was time for Shakespeare again. And Romeo and Juliet is obviously a play that freshmen study, so by the time, obviously they haven't studied it yet, but most of our students have studied the play. It's also one of the best known stories in English literature. And so I decided to do Romeo and Juliet, and then happily, Shakespeare and Company, which is which is about a 40-year-old company in Massachusetts, which has a very strong education program, was doing a week-long workshop in directing Romeo and Juliet with students. So I took that, I spent a week up in Massachusetts and came back with a lot of tools that we use to put on this show, in rehearsal and auditions and everything like that. So it just was like a really perfect, sort of a perfect storm.
Isn't that nice? It really gets to, I guess, how you prepare for these things. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, where you went this summer
Uh-huh.
and the idea that came to you as a result of just kind of enhancing who you are and what you are.
It was
as a member of our
revolutionary, and I
staff.
think you guys will attest to that as well. One of the main things that they do is, instead of standing with the script, your face in the script as you rehearse, other students feed you the lines. So the actors are free to look at each other and move about. And I think sort of neurologically, it seems to me, and I'm no neurologist, but or neuroscientist, but I think translating something you see on the page to verbalizing it and acting it is one process, but hearing it and speaking it is a more of a shortcut. And I think, Kira will be able to attest to that.
In the days of Shakespeare,
Yeah.
how did they do it?
They, nobody got the whole script. They just got their parts. I don't think they had very much time to memorize it. It was a different culture. As I was explaining to you, and I've talked to them a lot about this, is that they came to hear a play. They were much more,
They mean
auditory.
the audience, right.
The audience, yeah. I mean, we're a visual society. We know TV, we see TV. We're constantly on our screens. But they were attuned to the language in a way that we're not today.
Mm-hmm.
So one of our big challenges is to not only to understand, for the actors to understand what they're saying, but to communicate it to the audience through action, but to be so clear in what you're saying is that the audience will
So we stuck to the
understand
original?
it. Oh, yeah. It's cut. There are a lot of cuts.
Right,
In fact,
well,
I
there's a
used...
certain version of it, right?
Yeah, it's actually a version that Shakespeare and Company, I got there. It's their touring version of the play. It's about an hour and a half long. We'll see. We'll see how long it is. We haven't time.
So we have
yet.
Juliet with us today, right?
Yes.
So when you talk about the neurology of this, I'm not sure, how did you learn it all?
Well, we started this new method this year called feeding the lines, which is when someone will, like Ms. Tanko said, instead of like having your script with you on stage at all times and having to read directly and do it that way, we have someone reading the lines for you, and then you like recite them. And I think that has definitely helped a lot, which with hearing the language because, like you said, that is such a huge part of it. So being able to like really hear that and repeat it has definitely helped with memorization, I think, and also just knowing how the lines should be said and getting them more, like learning how to speak them more than reading them and trying to figure it out yourself.
What always fascinates me about the actual productions of Shakespeare, particularly with young people, is that the vernacular of Shakespeare's time and ours is so different. How do you feel when you're in the language
Well,
and the character?
yeah, I think that I've always loved English class and everything like that, and so it's definitely been a challenge to understand language, but also having studied it freshman year, the actual play itself, it has definitely been easier, but having like an understanding of what you're saying and like words, they're very confusing in his time period. Sometimes you'll say a word and we'll have to like search it up during rehearsal. It'll be a little confusing, but
How to pronounce it?
yeah, how to pronounce it, what it means, like stuff like that. But overall, I think it's been manageable. Like
So the more you get into the language, the more you actually get into the character as well.
yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you sense yourself as Juliet?
I think there are definitely relatable parts to her and her character. I mean, I don't think I'm that like drastic or dramatic, but I think that she definitely is a very like free spirit, and she is a character that is easy to relate to for I think a lot of young people. Just being able to, being rash and being like just wanting to do and rebel and all this stuff. So I think she is a relatable character, and I've definitely enjoyed playing her a lot.
You did.
Yeah, I like it.
So what is there about her that you actually could relate to?
Well, I think
Other than the fact that she's a free spirit?
yeah.
Okay.
I think that a large part of her character is that she kind of, before she meets Romeo, she lives to please other people, like her parents and just everyone. She's kind of this like perfect daughter who doesn't do anything wrong. And I think that her world really like changes after she meets Romeo, and she sort of becomes her own person and realizes that she wants more out of her life and doesn't want to just listen to what people tell her to do. And I think that is relatable, and sort of becoming your own person like as we get older and having to make decisions for yourself. So I think I relate to that part of her.
She really grows into herself, actually, in the play itself.
She does.
She does, yeah.
She's the
It's an
smartest
extraordinary
character in the play.
transformation.
She's the smartest character in the play. She's a very smart girl. Yeah, she's very smart.
And very reflective.
Yeah, I mean, she comes up, what's in a name is profound. It's sort of the source of semiotics and, symbology and all this stuff. It's really an incredible thought that she has. The other thing is something I learned also to do. I mean, you do it naturally, but dictionary work. What does this mean? Certain words just don't necessarily mean what you think they mean in the language of the 1600s. So you have to do that.
So the whole process is really an educational one.
Definitely.
And in addition to that, the production itself. So I'm just going to transition to Tim
Yeah.
right now. So what did you learn? I mean, when you consider how they produce things, to what extent are we trying to emulate what Shakespeare did at the time that they produced his plays?
Well, in the Globe, they didn't really have a set, and we kind of just made it our own in terms of building like a balcony and a stage in that sort of way.
So what's your role in the whole thing? I mean, when you say that, do you manage the development of the set, or do you help in that? Or do you manage the players? I mean, what's the role that you play?
I sort of overlook what goes on stage and off stage. Like, I manage like what we're building, I manage the props that actors are using. I also overlook the actors themselves and see how they're doing.
Tim,
Are you cueing?
Yes.
Do you have a
I'm-
team that cues?
I have 2 ASMs. One of them is very involved in lights, and the other is very involved in the costumes. And I also have two sound electricians, technicians.
So you manage the entire production?
Yes.
Right.
Well, Tim's also in play production, so he's more involved in some ways than a stage manager would necessarily be.
Yes.
But also keeping track of where the actors are supposed to
But
be.
we talked before about partnerships. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's very, very, it's really a critical role
Mhm.
that you have somebody who's as sensitive to what's going on the stage as you might be as a director.
Mhm.
Lighting makes a difference, the sound makes a difference, moving from one person to another. I mean, I don't know who directs the sound, but I've seen the boards that they work at, very, very complicated.
Yes.
And you have to be, and by the way, voice, holy smokes. Now, you're not mic'd, do we? We don't mic them, right?
No.
So how do you project?
Um,
I'm listening to your voice right now. I mean, this is your TV voice, but you must have a stage voice as well.
yeah, I think that having the audience on stage, especially this year, is definitely helping with that because you don't have to project to such a large audience. But it definitely is important to really get your voice to be heard for all the audience. But I also think that us doing Shakespeare is very convenient with that because so much of the language is meant to be like really spoke so loudly and big. So I think that the language has definitely helped us with creating stage voices.
Do you get involved in projection without screaming? I mean,
Oh, sure, yeah. In fact, I was working with one of the characters who gets very, very angry yesterday, and I said, what if you're just really cold? You'll see that today. And it was almost scarier than yelling. But you still have to be, you have to project, you have to be heard. But I think also the language and just the way it's written, the vowel sounds, it just pushes you out, right? It's not an intimate language. It's not realistic, really. I mean, we want to underpin the realism of the characters and their behavior, but when it comes to speaking the language, it's not realism. So you have to paint pictures for your audience. You have to tell the audience what you're feeling. You've got to show it, but you're telling them too. It's the language is just paramount in Shakespeare. It's primary, no question about it. Also, I just want to mention, Tim mentioned, but this is the first year we have a student who's doing the lighting design, Emma Wills Umgenstock.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's working really hard to create a lighting plot. It's exciting, yeah, she's working very hard.
but you manage the whole thing. I mean, so that you have to, when I say manage, coordinate it, right? So I mean,
Yeah. It involves a lot of.
You don't want the lighting going up here, and someone's standing over, I mean,
Mhm.
so all of that, I mean, I'm being overly simplistic, but
Well, explain
you really
coloring
have to
the
know your
show.
characters and know the entire play.
Yeah, since the lighting designer is also an assistant stage manager, she also knows the movement and the blocking, and she also knows like when which light is supposed to be on which.
Yeah. What's the main role that you play when, in other words, when you think of yourself as the stage manager, what do you see as the primary role of the stage manager?
I think of myself as the person that overlooks the production as a whole. And I focus on which, I'll say, department needs the most help. And I just try my best to solve whatever problems are thrown at us.
It always comes up in every good manager, problem solving.
Yeah, I mean, Tim keeps track of scheduling and the conflicts that the actors have, who's not, reminds me who's not going to be there today, so we can sort of switch things around. But mainly, he keeps track of the blocking of the show, where the actors are supposed to be on stage, so that, and what happens with that, the language becomes very closely associated with the blocking that helps memorization, so they feed each other, and so that becomes really important as we go along.
Yeah, when you talk about on stage, I just want to kind of switch gears just a little bit now and just ask, getting into the characters you talk about, how do you do that at home? Do you practice at it at home? Do you look in the mirror? I mean, just pacing yourself, walking somewhat like her, becoming the character? How do you go about doing that?
I think that really, getting to be and really submerge yourself into a character is really important. I definitely do a lot of work with my lines and reading them, and I think for me, what happens most of the time is I'll just be reading lines or trying to memorize, and the emotion, like, I don't even have to be doing it full out, you know, like just reading over lines, but you really know what your character is trying to say and like what they're feeling in that moment, and I think that really has helped me a lot in really like being able to connect emotionally with Juliet. I think then when you're citing her lines and things like that, it just becomes a lot easier.
You know, it's so interesting to listen to you speak like that, because at some point, you stop memorizing and you become the character. In other words, the lines, you've said them so many times, they become a part of you.
Yeah, I think in a lot of productions that I've been in, there's always this like one pivotal moment that it's like you realize you're not saying the lines as much anymore. You're not thinking like, oh, what's my next line? It's
Yeah.
more,
You
it
become
just,
the character.
yeah, and I think that that's when if that does happen, when it does happen, it's like a really nice experience.
It is, and I think it translates into what we experience as part of the audience. And that's really your job.
Yeah.
I want to believe you. I want to know who you are, and who you are on the stage is Juliet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the rehearsal process is so sort of kind of, not chaotic, but just, you know, you're worried about so many mechanical things and artistic things, but there have been some moments when something has happened in rehearsal and everybody just goes, oh, you know.
Can we have one of those oh moments? What did?
Yeah.
How,
There's-
yeah.
There are scenes where the parents get very, very disappointed in their child, and they actually get angry, and it reaches a point where the actors themselves get flustered by basically the aftermath of that scene. I've seen actors like walk backstage with faces red, like fanning themselves because they were
Wow.
so flustered about the scene that they were just in.
I mean, there are a lot of difficult issues in this play. There's, you know, parental abuse. I mean, there's suicide, obviously. It's peak emotions.
Mhm.
That's, I think, is particularly challenging. Is I mean, it's operatic emotion, really. I mean, you know, the emotion, the peak of emotions that these characters reach are, you know, where an opera star would reach their, you know, at the peak note in their aria. I mean, there are arias. There are so many soliloquies and monologues, and it's just to.
Someday we can have that conversation
Oh,
about
okay.
how much Shakespeare influenced many of the operas and the
Yeah,
same
Othello,
storylines.
yeah.
Absolutely, right, sure. So, just getting back, we're really coming to an end here. Any words of encouragement for those who are younger than you, who might want to aspire to this type of activity?
I love theater so much. I mean, like coming to the school and taking theater arts classes and things like that has just made me really, really appreciate it. And I think that if anyone is ever thinking that they should get involved with it, I'd say absolutely do it. I think it's
Do you think
great.
you'll pursue it when you leave us?
I think that I always want it in my life. I don't know if I'm gonna necessarily go into it or anything, but I think that it's really become very comforting to me, and those are where I think I find the people that I sort of resonate the most with. So
Yeah, you don't have to go to Hollywood or Broadway
yeah,
to
no.
experience. You know,
Yeah.
there are so many community theater groups, and
Yeah.
so many people feel the same way you do and wanting to make it part of their lives forever,
Mhm.
and they can.
Yeah,
So isn't that wonderful?
yeah.
Good. How about you, Tim?
Theater is for everyone. Like, there's so many aspects in it that like, if you feel the slightest out of place, you walk into the auditorium, there's a job for you. Like, whatever skill you have, you can apply that to any sort of part of it, the
That
production.
is a great way to end.
Mhm.
Theater is for everyone, it really and truly
Mm,
is.
yeah.
I mean, we very often focus on the actors, but when you consider the entirety of the production, you realize that there is a job for anyone who wants to participate, so. All right, well, thank you both, this was great.
Thank you.
Thank
Deborah,
you.
as
Thank
always,
you.
I really appreciate you coming on.
As always, yeah.
So it's
Thanks.
always fun,
It
so
was
thank you
fun.
very much.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, I forgot.
Oh, when we're
When?
performing.
Oh, my
Okay.
goodness, holy smokes.
Wednesday through Saturday, November 14th through 17th,
17th,
at
okay.
7:30 PM in the auditorium.
So Wednesday night, Thursday
Thursday,
night, and Friday night.
And Saturday night,
Oh, boy, 4 nights.
4 nights, because
Okay.
of the smaller, because
Okay.
we can seat about 150 on the stage. So we always add in a performance for that.
Okay.
So, yeah, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Oh, my God, you're going to
7:30.
be worn out by the time this is all done.
Yeah,
but-
we gotta-
Need a
So,
long nap.
holy smokes, so, all right, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I almost
you.
forgot, so.
Oh, yeah, important.
Thank you all for joining us today. We hope to see you at the play again, November 14th, 15th, 16th, and 17th. So see you here at Southside again. Thanks again for joining us. See you soon. Bye.